If we take his arms off here, and we can sort of see how everything is intersected so far. Yeah, I think I'm happy with how his chest piece is there. So now we can move on to the limbs. Actually, I think I want to finish his body completely before I do that. So what we'll do is I'll draw on the basic shape for his midsection and his lower midsection, and then actually add in the details after I get that in place. Looking at his artwork, actually, I wonder if any of the other ones sort of, it looks like there's a couple different ways to approach kind of how his body transitions to his tail. One, I think I'm going to have to actually align this properly so it's following the through line from his chest. Let's do it this way. If we do that, get rid of these, those. We will sort of follow this sort of pattern here. Doesn't have to be exact, but kind of want to keep the perspective consistent at least. And then when I actually attach his legs, they'll sort of, the line should intersect and it should be consistent. Now I just think I need to add a little bit more detail around where his hips would be. He's got these sort of plates on the newer artwork. I think if I just divide up the different sections going down, then that'll probably get the same effect across. Just have to make sure I'm following the plane of symmetry, as it were, so it doesn't look too distracting. We'll do that down here. And over here. Now, if I pull this down, then it'll be a little bit more flush. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Still think I need to divide up his midsection a little bit more. Maybe we can do that down here to match the sort of detail work that I put on his chest. Again, trying to go for consistency, but doesn't need to be exact. Okay. I think what I'll do is, like I did for the arms, I'm going to move his legs off so I can focus on each part I'm doing here. I think we're good to move on to his arms. I think the arms and legs will be a little bit easier than the torso, just because all I have to do is design one of each and then I can mirror them. So for his arms, he's got these sort of bony shoulders, which I'm going to have to cut out to intersect them with his torso itself. Not a whole lot of specific detail on his bicep and tricep here. I think what I can do is create the basic shape and then add some additional detail once I have the outline of forearm. Okay, I can delete that. I don't think for Ridley I'm going to put the same kind of accent circle patterns that I normally do. I feel like that might take a little bit away from his kind of bio-organic design. Now it'll just be a matter of dividing up the different sections on his upper arm and forearm, and then we can work on his hands. Hands are going to be a challenge, I think. I definitely don't want to screw those up. Okay, for his bicep. Doesn't have any spikes or anything on his bicep, so I'm just going to divide up a couple of sections for texture purposes and then move on to the forearm. Looking at where's the Super Nintendo artwork? The Super Nintendo artwork for Ridley, interestingly enough, has a lot of specific, is this almost like contouring, same as his tail. Let me pull that over here. Looking at that, he has that same patterning on his limbs, and I'd assume his body, you'd see here. These ring-like dividing sections he's got. I think that's the only version of him where they did that. I guess at some point they opted to go for a more plating type look than just the sort of ringlets. Is that what you would call that? But I think I want to maintain some of that. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit more texture to the areas around his joints to sort of nod at that particular version. I do think it's unique, and it was kind of an interesting addition at the time. So we'll sort of incorporate both types of design elements here, and we'll see what the final product looks like. And his hands, I'm starting to think ahead in my mind here how I want to tackle his hands. I think I have an idea. Okay. do it for the forearm. Okay, so his hands... I think I want to have... his fingers going out like this. Ridley's got these long, sort of gnarled claws in his hands. I could delete the placeholders. He's got 3 fingers and a thumb. We do the fingers first, and we actually divide up the sections for his talons here. It should be good to just divide up a little bit more along here. Not really his knuckles. It's on the old school design. It's that same ringlet texture on his body and limbs. It goes all the way to his fingers too. So we'll kind of keep that in mind here. And I'll add these sort of bumps and we'll see how that looks. I don't want to get too crazy with the details on his hands because ultimately it's going to be zoomed out, so you won't be able to see it that closely. And for his thumb, his thumb could be a little longer. Put the actual nail here. And divide it here and here. And that should be good for his thumb. After that, it'll just be a matter of copying his individual fingers so that we've got 4. So I think I want to have them alongside each other. Let's see. I want this to not look too weird. Although that's needs to go. So we could layer them like that, and what I'll do is cut out these sections and then this part right here, and then I think I might have the third one hooking down underneath. That way it doesn't look too wide. Get the feeling this particular drawing commentary is going to need to be split up. Assuming I do this in under 2 hours, I don't know if I want to put up a hour-and-a-half plus video. It might be easier to digest to break it up into 2 parts. But we'll see once we're done. Okay, I think I do like having his other claw down here. Let's see how that looks. Might be bent a little too far back. See if I can unbend it a little. Yeah, I think that's functional. I do think I need to intersect these with his actual hand a little bit more so it doesn't look like they're floating off into nothing. There we go. his arm is coming along. Now I'm gonna have to trim off part of the shoulder. But first I want to make sure. I think his arm's a little too big. That's a little bit better. Okay. And then all I have to do is cut out this section here. And then I can actually start mirroring everything across and get the other arm in place. And then I can move on to the legs. And let's see. Don't think I'm gonna have him throwing up his arm quite that dramatically. Let's see, his shoulder is about there. Maybe I want to have it lower. Yeah, I think I like having his shoulder down, and I think I'm actually going to move his forearm so that it doesn't look like it's symmetrically positioned. But for this part, we're going to have to clean that up a little bit. And the point of the pose is not to have it be too symmetrical. Actually, now that I think about it, that might be a bit of a problem because of, no, well, his leg is going to be too high now, but I think I can get away with moving it down a little bit. I think I can move it down and actually give him a bit more of a pelvis here. That's not something I say every day. Let's see. I guess I can mirror that other side up once I actually get there. Alright. I think that will do for his upper body. Now to work on his legs. His quads are... He's actually got pretty bulky quads, I noticed from the newer Smash Brothers concept art here. So what we can do is add in enough texture, and then it's pretty much one color, but he's got these sort of bone-like ridges kind of circling around his leg. I think we can sort of replicate that by adding some sharp edges and then dividing up sections on his upper leg or thigh. And then I think before I get too far down his his legs here. I want to make sure that this part... Okay, I might have to scale that down a little bit so it'll fit. And then his knee doesn't have separate sections for his knee, but I'm going to divide it up a little bit like this. That way it gives me a pivot point for the joint later. Now his lower leg, calf, and shin. I think I'm going to have to actually push the length down a little bit more. As it stands with that placeholder, it's too short. Since he doesn't have short calves, we'll just move this down a little bit. It doesn't have to be too dramatic. He's got that same fleshy sort of texture. It goes down his calf and shin. Looks like they did the same kind of texture work on the old school design as they did on the rest of his body. So I think I'll divide this up and then I'll add in some detail along the edge so that it's got a bit more variation in texture on his calf. And what we'll do is I'll do that up here, and then I'll actually go back and add that external. Add some over here. Here, and we'll sort of flesh this out a little bit. And that should just about do it for his leg. Probably divide up this upper section of his quads a little bit more. Do one down here, one up here. And one question I've gotten in the past when it comes to my drawing process on designs like this is how I decide where to divide up sections whenever I'm working on these, and the short answer to that is it's pretty much just arbitrary. When I'm designing things, I kind of take a look at the different parts, and I think where it makes the most sense to add some texture variation. It's really nothing more complicated than that. A good portion of my design process in general is me just winging it. I think that's one of the things I like about doing design work this way. Using a software like Rhino is the commands are powerful enough that I can kind of let my mind wander as far as the end product and just experiment with repeating commands or varying combinations of commands. And then that ultimately helps me arrive at whatever it is I'm drawing. So it's nothing complicated or fancy. It's a lot of times just letting my mind wander when I'm free drawing. For stuff like this with Ridley, I know my end product is going to be, so I've got kind of more of a cohesive game plan, and I can't let my mind wander too much, otherwise I'll end up with something that is not Ridley, which for the sake of the exercise today, that's not the end goal. Anyway, back to this particular part. We're almost done with the toes. Again, remembering back to the concept art, Ridley only has 2 toes. He has 3 fingers and a thumb, which is an interesting design choice, and I don't have any issue with it. It's just kind of something I noticed and wanted to make sure I addressed when I was doing my own version. And I may have to bend these into place so it looks like he's in the air and not standing, because he's not on the ground. Let's see, maybe we can do it this way. I'm gonna have to redraw this section between his upper and lower leg on the other side, since it's gonna have a bend. I want the pose to be dynamic enough, but not quite so over the top that we enter JoJo territory. Since the internet would definitely notice if I was trying to pull a JoJo with poses. And while there's a time and place for it, I don't think our nefarious space dragon here is really thematically fitting for over-the-top manliness poses. Okay. I think we're more than halfway done here. Once I get the legs in place, it shouldn't take too long to get the tail, and then I'll have to come back and deal with the wings. What we can do is get the leg in place. Looks like I might have to scale that down too. I could play around with the scale a little bit before I finalize everything. But I think that'll do for now. Now the question is going to be, how do I want to alter this for the other side? And we can keep the placeholder there, and then we'll mirror this, and then I'm going to start bending or rotating things into place for this sort of raised knee thing that it got going on here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just get the actual leg connected to his body properly, and then I'll worry about bending it into place. Now, right now, it looks like Ridley is doing the splits, which is funny, but not really what we're going for as far as more dynamic pose. So we'll do it this way. I want to keep this sort of spiky connecting part here, but this part's going to have to be spun around. We'll do it from here. Let's see. Trying to visualize where his knee is. I think that'll do it right here. And then all I have to do is connect it up this way, and then I have to cut out the section right here. And then we'll make sure that proportion-wise it matches up to the other side, so it doesn't look like his left leg or right leg in the picture here is shorter. Yeah, that works. I think it's still rotated out a little bit too wide, though. I think it's because this leg is up too high. This is sort of the point where I'm playing around with all of the different parts of the pose to get to kind of the final product. That might be a little too much. I think I like that a little bit better. Then I'm going to have to adjust his tail a little bit. I have to cut out a section just for his heel there. That's okay. I'm not too worried about that. You can even adjust that if necessary. Alright. Noticing with his jaw here, I think his head might still be a little too big. Kind of hard to tell perspective-wise, but to me it looks like his head is too big. His head, if I were to just rotate it here, his head is longer than his body, so yeah, I think I need to scale his head down. And then maybe shorten up his neck a little bit. Yeah, that already looks better to me, just at a glance. We definitely don't want any part of Ridley to be too big. That's what got him from showing up in the older Smash Brothers games, according to the internet. Okay, I'll leave that for now. Right now his neck is kind of splitting the difference between his shorter, more current version and the older Super Nintendo concept art, which had this really long, almost as long as his arm, this long bony appendage for his neck, so we'll kind of be in the middle with that. Okay. For you to take a look at the wings, I'm going to do those last. Okay. The positions of the wings has changed a little bit. I will deal with those at the very end. In the meantime, let's get his tail taken care of. Now, Ridley's tail, like we talked about before, takes a lot of inspiration from the Xenomorph, which has this long, segmented, scorpion-like tail. And they definitely ran with that idea in the more recent imaginings of Ridley. His older version, using that same kind of circular ridging, definitely had hints of that, but it was a little bit less blatant as far as what they were going for. So I think what I want to do, sort of hybridize both of those elements, is I'm definitely going to keep the multi-segmented sections. But I think I'm going to actually add a bit more spikiness to them, to each individual section as it goes. And that'll sort of take a little bit of both designs and create something different while still kind of keeping the originals in mind and not deviating too much. We'll see how it looks. If it looks too distracting, I can always just follow the in-game art and be consistent. The real question is going to be, how long do I want his tail to be? It's gonna be considerably lengthy, just based on how it normally looks. So let's try this. I'm gonna mirror the sections, or not mirror, I'm gonna copy the sections. And then I'll probably have to scale it down before I bend it into place. And then I'm going to add his blade-like tail end piece at the very, very end after I get everything in where I want it. Okay, that's probably too long. I don't know. If I scale it down, that might be fine. In the more recent designs that I've been working on, I've kind of taken to doing any sort of tail. Okay, that's definitely too long. I'll chop off 3 to start. I've definitely sort of taken a liking to doing tail appendages this way, just because it's easier to bend something into shape than to try and freehand it and get everything to be consistent. But oh, I'm going to have to bend this in several different directions, so what we'll do is try and follow the path curve here that I set, and then bend it into the shape I want. I think I'll have that coming off his body slightly off center. Actually, let's try this. Rather than having coming straight down, I think I'm gonna sort of work off of my initial idea and have it coming out from the side but still curving around his foot. We'll see how that turns out. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to adjust this part here, make it actually join up a little bit more consistently. And then, yeah, I do like the pathing on that a little bit better. Okay, cut that off there. Then here. And then we can delete all these. Okay. And all we have to do now is add his tail, or the end piece to his tail, which we're drawing it this way. It's got this sort of upside down knife look to it. little too big. Okay. I think that's good. Okay. I'm gonna fix something here and kind of lower his shoulders a little bit. All right. I think that's good. Now on to the final piece. What to do with his wings. I guess the first step would be just drawing the wings themselves, and then I gotta figure out how I'm gonna stick them on his body. So we'll do a basic. Hopefully the actual shape of his wings across the different iterations is pretty consistent. We've got main shape here, the actual part where the fingers. I don't really know what the correct scientific term for the actual appendages that come off the wing, but to me they look like fingers. And then he has, in most versions, 3 wing fingers. Got these kind of bony looking deals here, and I'm going to keep the spiky talons from the more recent Smash Brothers version. What I can do is copy these down and scale them for the remaining 3. It looks like the 2 other ones are smaller. So if I scale them down, then I can rotate them in place. Looks like they were roughly the same size. Actually, looks like the top one is considerably longer. So what I can do is kind of alter the section here. This is going to be where it actually joins up with his body. Still looks like this one needs to be a little bit shorter. I'll move it in like that, and then I'll just connect it up here. That. Now all we need to do is finish dividing up this section leading up to the wing and then adding the webbing, and from there I think it'll be a matter of figuring out the positioning, and then we can move on to coloring and we'll be almost done. Trying to decide how I want to do the actual webbing. Don't think I'm gonna do the kind of inset texture. I think I might opt to just divide it up with lines. Kind of similar to what I do with the Monster Hunter wings on like the wyverns and dragons. Do that. Get the main sections in here, and then I'll divide them up at the end. I guess while I'm kind of working on this part, it'd be a good time to talk about, I guess, my history with the Metroid franchise. Like I mentioned way back at the beginning, I played the original on NES back in the day. Never beat it. I beat it much later when I tried the game out again. But from there, I remember playing the Game Boy version, which came after. It was the Return of Samus, I think. And I liked that game a lot. And I did beat that one. Used to play it all the time when we were going trips or taking my Game Boy places. And eventually when we had a Super Game Boy, I played on there too. To me, that game sort of cemented the franchise for me, just because I didn't have as much attachment to the original. And at some point I'm going to play the 3DS remake for the second Metroid game that they've done. I've heard good things about it, I just haven't gotten to it quite yet. From there, it was probably a couple years until the Super Nintendo came along. But at some point, I think I had rented Super Metroid from Blockbuster when Blockbuster Video was a thing. And I might have actually bought it from Blockbuster when they went out of business. But I remember reading in Nintendo Power about the new Super Metroid game and reading all the different guides that they had made. I never owned the big full guide, player's guide that they had for Super Metroid. That was one of the ones that I didn't have. But I remember there are the articles in the magazines proper sort of talked through a lot of the secrets, and then of course they had the comic that was going on around the same time, kind of as like a marketing thing to push for the new Super Metroid game at the time. And after that, I don't think I played any of the Metroid titles until Fusion on the Game Boy Advance. I can't remember off the top of my head if Fusion came before or after the first Prime game on GameCube. I do know that I never played any of the GameCube ones because I didn't have a GameCube. But from Super Metroid, my progression of games pretty much went Super Metroid, Fusion, Zero Mission, and then that was the last time I played a Metroid game. The series kind of didn't do a whole lot for a while after they made the last, was it Metroid Prime 3? And I don't think we saw anything else until the Wii came along, and I believe that's where they made Other M, but again, we don't really talk about Other M. And since then, there wasn't anything else, and then they had the remake of the second one that came out, I think last year, end of 2017. So, hopefully, they announce Metroid Prime 4 at some point soon, and then that'll be the next major installment in the franchise. I'll probably play it. I've been meaning to try out the old Prime ones too, so maybe I'll get the collection for it if they re-release it on Virtual Console or something. Okay. In the meantime, going back to our Space Dragon here. Got the wings pretty much done. I divided up the webbing in between the different wing fingers, and I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. So now it's just going to be a matter of figuring out how I want to position these wings. For one, I think I'm going to need to scale them down, since his wings aren't massive. I feel like in the older games he had these little tiny bat wings, and they always look kind of funny, but now his wings have been kind of sized appropriately. At least in the more recent versions, it looks like his wings would actually be able to sustain him in flight, which is important. Or at least for the sake of realism with your space pirate dragons. So now I gotta see how I want to do this here. Again, I could go for a layering type thing, but one thing that just occurred to me is because of the way the wings were divided up, if I were to put them on a separate layer behind him, they may look, the different parts that are divided up may look kind of strange when there's something behind. So I don't know how viable that's going to be now. I think first thing I want to do is get the other wing kind of in position, and then I got to figure out if I'm going to divide them up or layer them. At this point, I'm kind of leaning towards dividing them up so that everything can be on one layer, and then I don't have to worry about the coloring, just to differentiate them. Let's see. Alright, I'm going to need to do this further away. Okay. I don't think I want to go the route of having his wing be up high. I think it's going to look best to have it be more or less symmetrical with the other one. And I think that would actually work in this position, and then I just divide it up from the shoulder and then cut out the sections around his hands. I don't think that would be too distracting. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, because I'm going to have to go all the way around his arms here, and then gonna have to cut out all this here. And then here. Go upwards. Follow the hand. Follow the fingers. And then right here. And then down here. I guess we'll see how clean that looks. Again, I think this route's gonna probably be a little bit easier instead of going for the layering route, because then I can keep the color palette consistent. Oh, I need to do this part too. Right here. And then this part. This part. This part. And then the last finger down here. Oh, and this one. Okay. Oh, I need to do this part. Okay. And last part of the webbing up here. And this part right here gets a little bit confusing with all these different sections overlapping like this. Which is why I didn't want to do this in the first place, but I think it's going to turn out better this way. I'm just going to need to make sure I color this consistently. In fact, I think this webbing section is going to need to go all the way up to here. Shouldn't have deleted that. This is okay to delete. This is the last bit of the wing edge, trailing edge here. Whoops. And then okay. So that should do it. Get rid of this from the shoulder. To cut the other wing off right here. And there. And I think we are just about done. Coloring that's going to be a bit of a chore, but it's okay. So I think we are just about ready to move on to the coloring. Just taking a look at his tail here and making sure I did that right. I think his tail's upside down. The pointed side of the blade's got to be on the underside of his tail. Okay. Then we'll just redo this part here. Okay. This is going to be a big image, tall. That's okay. Now, the fun part. Working on the coloring. So using the planar surfaces, we've created the actual two-dimensional surfaces that I'm going to color. And it looks like there weren't any missing sections. There's a lot here, but I think it all turned out fine. So for Ridley's palette, I'm gonna go with the more familiar, more recent purple. So the main color palette for him is gonna be, let's see, it's kind of a dark purple or pale purple almost. So I'm gonna do that for his body, and I'm gonna add some accents for this darker purple on his eyes and his body. Sort of just using my best judgment on where to put these. The more recent concept art from Smash doesn't have this used everywhere. It's kind of just around his torso. It's not on his limbs at all. So I don't think I need to go crazy with that. And that's almost a more maroon purple color. Yeah. So we do that. His wing spike thingies, his claws and teeth are also going to need to be a different color. This one. And this one. I'm not going to change the color on the spikes in his head. I'm going to keep it kind of like it is on the Super Nintendo artwork, where there's no differentiation in the spikes in his face. I'm going to keep that consistent with the purple paletting on the rest of his body. foot claws, his tail blade, and I think that's it for those. Oh. Huh. I may have screwed up on the color paletting here. Yep, I do not want a gloss color. That was supposed to be a main color. I gotta do it all over again now. Okay. I selected the wrong one. So I gotta set the main color. Gotta go back in and do the darker highlights, and then I gotta do his claws again. Hopefully that gloss setting won't mess up too much. I don't normally use a gloss setting when I'm doing two-dimensional stuff because there's no immediate light source, so there's nothing for it to reflect and create that gloss effect. It's more for three-dimensional stuff when you're playing around with lighting sources and whatnot. So that shouldn't really need to be a thing for this one. Okay, teeth and claws. We'll go gray. Gloss finish. Hopefully that doesn't screw anything up. Now the webbing on his wings. I think we'll go for kind of a lighter pinkish color for this. We'll go with the more recent color paletting from the Smash Brothers art. Kind of a magenta-ish color. Yeah, that should do. And the only thing left should be his... Oh, did I get the tail? Nope. Huh. Thought I got the toes. Did I not get the toes? I guess not. Easy enough to fix. And last but not least, his eye. Oh, I gotta get his tongue too. Ridley's eyes, I think they've always been consistently yellow or orange. His Super Nintendo artwork has them kind of off orange. The more recent one has them straight yellow. I think that stands out a little bit better. And his tongue, kind of a fleshy dark pink. And I think we are just about done. I think I'll keep a black background for this one. I think it'll make his purple color stand out pretty well. But we'll see what the final render looks like, see if I missed anything. Well, his claws, I think they need to be darker when they're sort of overlapped with his regular parts of his body. The claws don't really stand out much. I think I'm going to make his teeth and claws a couple shades darker just so they show up a little bit better. keep those highlighted in case I need to change them again. Maybe I'll make them a little bit closer to dark gray, dark silver. Okay. That should show up a little bit better. Yeah, that's definitely better. I'm gonna size my window up a little bit. And there we go. I think that will do it for Ridley here. Looking at the clock, almost 2¼ hours. This one was definitely a bit more time consuming than some of the other ones I've done for drawing commentary. But overall, Ridley's design is kind of complicated, so I expected it to take a little while. Overall, I'm pleased with the results. I think the pose is pretty standard for what we usually see when Ridley's in game. I do think the wings could have been implemented a little bit better, but at the same time, given what I had to work with here, I can't think of a way that would have been more effective as far as showing the wings and not having to deal with things like differentiating color palettes if I decided to layer them. So I think that turned out pretty decently. Overall, it's going to be interesting to see him show up in Smash Brothers. I can't wait to try him out. And I'll have to start thinking about what I want to do for the next drawing commentary. It's probably not going to be anything this complicated. I think it'll probably be an original design, maybe something that I can knock out in a much shorter time frame, so I'm not having to do super long videos. When this eventually gets posted onto YouTube, I will probably break it up into 2 parts. It'll be 2-hour-long parts, and I'll just edit the commentary accordingly, and we should be good to go. So, once again, thanks for checking out my videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.